All right, so let's get back. And for this part of the demo, I will talk about setting up the program, the Lambda function, and a few other things that are, as Keith was saying, infrastructure for the program to run. And as part of this infrastructure and the whole setup, we are going to end up setting up the bucket, the cloud, where we are storing the database, the tracker. And ultimately, at the very end, we are going to set up the event bridge to set up the schedule for our survey. But for now, we're just going to go for the Lambda, the S3, and actually we're setting up SQL here too. So, but I did not put a square on it. All right, so I did see that some people have already downloaded the files for the workshop. The files, I think, will be available for maybe a month on Box. So if you haven't downloaded them yet, do download them. The actual code is open and available in GitHub. It's just that the zipped versions that will need to be uploaded here are already set up in the Box folder, and you don't have to zip anything. So after downloading those files, there is a file in that folder that is a YAML file that you will need. And this is what we're going to upload into AWS to set up the database, to set up the bucket, and then a few other things that allow the program to run. And the way this program, this file works, which I did not understand until Keith told me that he just needed to specify things, was it creates a point-and-click interface for you to enter all the information that will be needed. And then this information that you entered is going to be pulled into the program, and so that you don't have to enter anything manually into the program. So it's cutting quite a few steps that we had to do originally when we launched this. And then after that, we're going to go to Lambda and we're going to upload the function files, the program files, so that everything can run. After this, I'm just going to show you how we set up the schedule to get Lambda to run on time. And I will do a demo of how we can actually send text messages to everyone that provided phone numbers. So if you've already downloaded the file, you're going to go to CloudFormation, the same way that I showed you how to find Pinpoint. Just go to AWS, type in there CloudFormation. And on that menu on the left side, you're going to go to Stacks, and you're going to create a stack. And you're going to tell it that you want it with new resources. You are going to tell AWS that you want to use an existing template. That's what you're bringing it. You will upload that template, and that's this file that is in the folder that you're going to upload. Once you upload that file, you will be prompted to enter a whole bunch of information. And some of this information you will have already retrieved from Qualtrics. Remember on that one slide I showed you the dashboard, that you have to get the pool, you have to get your Qualtrics API, you have to get the, what was it? I think just those two need to go here. Yeah, the directory ID, that's the pool. Your Qualtrics token is your API token. And all these things then are going to get piped into the program after you enter them here and after we, of course, upload the program. So if you're following this afterward, just from the PDF files, you're going to have to create a stack name. I just made up any name. I think, do these have to be unique? No. Okay. So any name that is identifiable to you. You will then have to create a bucket name. Bucket is just the cloud place where you are storing that database. This bucket name has to be unique to AWS ever, not just your AWS account ever. So if you just do something like test bucket, it is going to be used already, and this is not going to work out. So you definitely end it. You will not get a message telling you this is already in use, but once you try to run everything, you will crash. And then if that happens, if for some reason you put a bucket name and you forgot about this, that it has to be unique and it doesn't work, all that you have to do is go back here and create a new stack with a new name and then just restart it. So it won't destroy your AWS account or anything. So give a bucket name. You're going to have to put that pinpoint number that you requested. So to be able to do this, you need a pinpoint number that that we set up earlier and that you registered. You're going to need a pinpoint project ID. I'm not sure if you remember, I showed the pinpoint page, and I also showed in one of the slides, and you had a little yellow square that said you will need this ID. This is the one that you're going to have to put over here. It's just like a very long string of lowercase letters. You will need your Qualtrics customer name, which is, in our case, duke.qualtrics.edu. And all you have to put here is Duke. If you are using Qualtrics, say through like when I was at Towson, it might have been qualtrics.towson.edu. The company name would be Towson. That's all they would have to put in. I guess you have to adjust. If it's edu, it's going to look a little bit different, but the URL versus if it is enterprise and it's just a .com version of it. Then you're going to have to enter your Qualtrics directory ID and put very helpful a little identification there, and it says that it begins with cool, and that's the one that you're going to be picking up from your Qualtrics ID page. And then you're going to have to put your API token over here that you also set up Qualtrics. Any questions about this part? All right. And then you're going to click next. It is going to ask you if you want to roll back all staff resources. He told me to check that one. And he told me to also, where's the other one? And he also told me to delete all newly created resources once you do this, because if I understood that correctly, it's because if something is wrong and it crashes, you're not reusing that wrong input, correct? All right, I got a nod, so yes. And then you just gotta acknowledge at the bottom here that you allow CloudFormation to create IAM resources. This is those roles that I was talking about earlier. So once you are setting this up, AWS is going to create for you roles or things that give people certain permissions. And then when you create accounts, say to users, if they are research assistants or if they are the data manager, then you can assign these roles to those people, but these are getting created for you. They might not be assigned to anyone. If you're the root user and you're doing this here, you will get those roles assigned to you anyway. So you will be able to use everything regardless. But if you're assigning to people and you want to limit what they see, then this is how you would control it, by limiting what they have access to. You will hit submit, and then you will get to this page. And the file that you uploaded is what's being used then to create all this architecture and to create the bucket for you, to give the bucket a password automatically, to set up server and other things that are supporting the program running. This takes about 20 minutes to run though. If you refresh the page, you will be able to see like everything else that goes all the way down here. So this list is enormous, and it will tell you that, something's creating in progress, something is done, something has crashed. If you end up using, for example, a bucket name that is not unique. After 20 minutes, everything will be set up for you. And once you go to the say Lambda, and I'll show you, there will be things that were created for you there too, that you won't have to do yourself. So things will appear in your AWS is what I would say. So if you refresh, you will see all the progress. And then ultimately, once it's over, the screen is actually displayed to the left of the big one on the real AWS website. And it will just tell you that the creation is complete. And to answer Erin's question, actually, the one for shortening the URL is created the same way. You just upload a stack and or create a stack, and then that gets uploaded into your program. But then I guess you have to sync things too between them, because the information for that is not going to be in the program yet. Is that correct, Kate?
Well, I didn't take a look at that, but yeah, about right.
All right, then you go to Lambda, and this is where we're going to upload the program to. You're gonna have to, there are a few steps in Lambda, and I'm just naming them ahead in case you are doing this later and you just wanna check things off. And that's why I put numbers in everything throughout, just so you can make sure that you are going through the steps that you need to. But we're gonna have to create a layer. We're gonna upload the zipped file that I mentioned that is already set up for you in Box. You're gonna have to add this new layer that you created to the program, and then you will update the database. And updating the database is already part of the actual use of the Lambda function for sending your text messages. And we'll do that slowly, one by one. So to create the layer, you're gonna go to AWS Lambda, the same way that we went to Pinpoint, type it up there, Lambda, click on Lambda, go to the left where it says layers, and then create a layer. And then you're gonna give it a name, any name that you want that makes sense to you. You will upload a zip file. This file here, the QM Python layer, this is in the folder also. This is the zipped one that you're going to upload. You have to set that it's the x86_64. And then you have to set which, runtime you are using. Keith said to use Python 3.11 because this is the one that he used to build this, but yeah, apparently could have used a different one, but he said to choose this one instead. And then create. And now if you actually go to your Lambda, this thing here was created for you earlier during that step with the YAML file. This was not created just now. This will appear there for you because of all that form that you filled out earlier. From here, you will then go to functions. You will click that QM Lambda that was created for you already. You will go to code. On the right side over there, which I cannot read from here, you will go to zip file, and you will upload this other zip file that is also in the Box folder for you. And then you will save. So here you're uploading the function proper, the program proper. Before we created a layer, now you're uploading the program proper to Lambda. And now we have to add that layer to the program. This is what Lambda is going to look like once you click on it. And we'll go over there for the demo. So you will see this live. And then you are going to, where is that? Here, add a layer. A custom layer because you created that. And now on that list of custom layers, the one that you created earlier is going to show up for you. This name is the same name that I created up above. That image at the top is from slide 59, and this is the name that we gave that layer. And this is just the name that you're selecting from the drop-down menu. And then just click add. My arrow is very off. And then you need to update your database environment. And this is how we are going to use that Qualtrics information, the survey, and the distributions to put the survey links and the expiration dates and the participant IDs in the database so that Lambda can query the database and it can query Qualtrics and update things and then output for you the survey completion from the database. To do that, you're going to have to go to test. I will show you how to do this too, but I just want to go over first. You will create a new event. And I guess there could be different ways that you could do this, but using the test functionality in Lambda was how we decided to just populate it. And you can use this also to test that your SMSs are sending as they should send. And again, I'll show you that later. But you'll create a new event. I am calling it update distribution, and it's showing red because I took a screenshot after I had created it. So it's telling me that this already exists. And then this is the text that you're going to have to put into it. In the Box folder, there is a template with this already. So you can just copy it from there and paste it over here. Just make sure that when you paste, this is kind of like R, if you use R for coding, and you've noticed that the quotation marks, if you copy and paste, say from Microsoft Word into R, the quotation marks are the very fancy curly ones, and R doesn't read that. If that happens here, you're just going to have to erase those and redo the quotation so that they look like those like straight versions of it. This is there.
And you would choose shareable there if you were working collaboratively on the project, or instead of?
Yes, yeah. And then somebody else would be able to update the database.
Yeah,
Yes. Right? To save. So there are two options. One is you test it and you don't save it, in which case you will populate the database, but whatever you entered here is not going to be saved. Another is just to save it, and then the information will be saved here, but the database is not going to be populated. Whichever you do, if you are setting this up ahead of time, but you don't want to put stuff in the database yet, you have to remember to click test before you run your study. Otherwise, there is nothing for the program to be running onto. And I've made that mistake before too, so put that. If you remember what I mentioned earlier about the timeout and the having too many participants or so many text messages to deliver, that eventually, while the function is running through that contact list or through those IDs, that it comes to a point where the running time times out and then it stops. And if you have a retries, let's say 100 retries, it's going to be doing this multiple times and stopping. There is a max timeout of 15 minutes, and that's what this is set up to. It was enough for us, 15 minutes, but this was the maximum. It's possible that if you had 1,000 participants at a time, I'd still have to break it down a little bit. But for 200, I will show you in a second too. It took us, I think, 7 minutes to send it to everybody. And again, you cannot adjust this manually in Qualtrics or another place. You might be able to ask someone to do that, but you directly cannot adjust this in another platform that you're using. Unless you have access to the code or to AWS. So this is what I was talking about. This is the distribution of, this is how long the code was running to distribute the text messages to participants in the lifestyle study. So at the bottom, you can see from May 14th until June 11th, those were the days of the, I think it was June 10th. Those were the days that the participants received the 8 surveys, the 8 short surveys. And on those days, those dots at the very top are the very first text message that they received. And that's why they are high. This on the left side is how long it took for all the text messages to be sent, how long the function was running to be able to send those texts. And then at the bottom is just the dates. So at the very top, it took 7 minutes because everybody was getting a text message. Here on the first reminder, maybe about half of the participants still needed to get a reminder to receive the survey. So that took only about 3 minutes. And then at the very bottom, that's the second and third reminders. Very fewer participants needed a second and third reminder than a first reminder. And so that took only 1 to 2 minutes to send to participants. And then you can see here that on the 2 makeup days, this bar is a little bit after 6/11, that the green dots are very close to the bottom. And that's because maybe 3 people received makeup surveys. So these were sent very quickly to them. Also on the issue of throttling, which is the one where it slows down delivery when you have way too many text messages that you're sending, and that I mentioned that we adjusted the time. So there's a few seconds in between each text message. This is going to affect how quickly the texts are sent to a sample, right? So if you have 500 people with 2 seconds in between or 1 second in between, this is going to extend that window of time that you have to send the text until it times out. But this does help with preventing that throttling and potentially not sending the messages, because it's treating it essentially as spam, because it's just too many at once and too quickly.
Do you have any idea what that time is?
In between the, I think is it?
Trigger spam, basically.
Good question. I think when we did it with, I do remember when we first sent the surveys at one time, it did get throttled, and we got an error, and he said that it got throttled. And it was because I think they were just all getting sent at the same time. Yeah, and then Keith adjusted that to, I think, is it 2 seconds that you put in between each of them?
Yeah, it was 2 seconds I put in between. That's something that can be adjusted, but given the number of participants we had, 2 seconds seemed to be pretty reasonable. If you have more than that, it'd be a little bit more research to see.
We keep it within the 15-minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Questions? So this is what you need to do to set up the program, which is very simple, right? You just have to upload that YML file, fill out the form that it created for you, and then you go to Lambda, you create a layer, upload the function, connect the layer to the function, and then update the database. And you should have already your survey number, like your survey ID set up. You should have your distribution ID set up at this point so that you can now actually use everything that is set up. So at this point, everything is ready for you to use. Right? And I will show you how we can do this. I will first do a point and click version of it. I will do a slide version, then I will do an actual checking one. The reason I did not default to doing immediately the demo version was because I was afraid that we might not have enough time. And if we did not have enough time, I wanted you to at least have an overview first before we actually try to do a shortened version of the demo. So to actually use an SMS, what you need to do is update your distributions in Lambda. I showed you the code, so you can update it, but this would be actually populating things. The way I showed you was just a template, but I'll show you how we can actually do this with real values is what I mean. You will then need to update the text of your SMSs in Lambda. I'll show you how to do that too. You will need to set up the survey delivery times and when you want the, and how long the study window is. So the time that the Lambda function is going to be triggered and for how long you want this to be triggered. So if your study runs on only 1 day, that's the same. The study duration is the duration of the trigger. That's fine. But if you have a recurring, repeated triggers and you want them all to be at 8 a.m. every single day of the week, then you have to set a window of time when you want this code to run. Otherwise, it's going to be running at 8 a.m. every single day for however long. And so you're going to have to do that. I will show how to do it. You will distribute your surveys, which will be automatic once number 3 is run. And then you get to check your exported file, which is also going to be automatic once number 3 is set up. All right, so first to update your distribution, this is what it would actually look like instead of that template that I showed you. What you would have is something that says action update distribution. All that you need to update is this EMD over here and the SV over here. If you have multiple surveys and you just want to do this once and you don't want to have to worry about setting this up multiple times every day the survey will run, you can add them all at once, which is what I did here. And then just put a comma next to each section. So one section is this curly bracket, distribution, survey, curly bracket, comma, and then another one, another pairing. And this is the distribution ID. So whether this was a reminder, whether this was an invite, you put them all in here. Whether this is a thank you email, whether this is a sample A or B or C, everything can go in here. You just have to make sure that that distribution is paired correctly with the survey ID. Otherwise, it's not going to send it because once Lambda probes Qualtrics using the API, if it finds that the distribution ID does not match the survey associated with it, it's not going to send anything. They need to be correctly matched. And yeah, I did put a template for that in the box folder. And for the buttons, you're going to have to click Edit Saved Event instead of Create New Event at this point. You will select which event you want to use. Remember that in the previous step, we created a new event. So at this point, this should show in that drop-down menu for you. And then you will adjust it over here. You will hit Test. And remember to save it as well. Otherwise, next time you go here, this is gonna be gone. The database is gonna be updated, so you're not gonna lose anything. But if you wanted to, double check your work, you won't be able to do that because it's not gonna have been saved. And then this is how you're going to edit your text message. You probably remember going to code over here, and we had to upload some stuff earlier. So this is the exact same window, only that we are going to code and then double clicking here at the bottom, survey StARR. And this text window is going to show up. And this is where you're going to put the text of your text message to participants. And like Erin asked earlier about the length of the link, this is going to be that full link that's going to be entered here. So if you want to prevent it from getting split into two messages, for whatever that causes or does not cause, you would enter either just the link first and then your text, or what I did for the study was I entered 160 characters exactly, including spaces, including the space to where it says curly bracket, survey link. That's where the survey link is going to be entered once this runs. And then you make sure that the link is sent in a second message instead of on the very first one and potentially getting broken. So do not delete the survey link instructions there because that's how that's going to get piped in there. And if you don't put a space between, say, the greater than sign and the link, that sign is going to be touching the link. So if you want a space between the link and the text, you got to add that here as well. You're going to do the exact same thing. Oh, sorry. Then you're going to click deploy because this is going to change the code for you. And then you will get confirmation that this ran. This is what I was just saying about 160 characters. And this is the URL shortener that I mentioned earlier that you could try to incorporate into your code. And again, we do not recommend shortening it in a public place because with a public service, because the links may contain private information that is going to get put into that public service. And then you're going to do the same thing for the reminders. You're going to go to code. You're going to instead select survey reminder. You got to double click that. You're going to edit your reminder text and you're going to deploy. And that's going to change the code for you as well. Now you have to just set up when you want all this to be triggered. You have the text of your message. You have the program set to run. You have already entered what the surveys are that you're distributing to these participants. Those surveys are the ones that are going to go into that survey link, curly bracket, and who the contact list is. You already updated that database. And now you just need to set up the trigger. And you do that in Event Bridge or Event Bridge Scheduler, which is remember I mentioned there's Pinpoint and there's Pinpoint SMS. It's the same thing. There's Event Bridge, there's Event Bridge Scheduler, but everything is under the umbrella of Event Bridge. So you could go to either. So same thing as we did before, you're going to just put that on the top right in the field, Event Bridge Scheduler or just Event Bridge. And you have to set up 4 rules for the code to be triggered. The first one is that you want it to start the text message and just to send a text message to participants. The second one is a trigger to check Qualtrics for the survey status. That's the reminder text check. If that is not sent, then you will loop to here. And then the third one that you have to set up is the final check, because participants will have, let's say that you sent them 4 text messages a day or 3 text messages a day. And at the end of the day, you need to know, did they fill all of these out? Because now I want all this information in my database, but I'm no longer sending a reminder. So the reminder text check does not apply at this point because you're not going to trigger another text message at this point. So what you're going to do is the final check. We're going to create this one, the third. And then the last one is just to export everything to the bucket so you can track the survey completion. So in Amazon, so if you went to Event Bridge proper, there would be this option down here that says Scheduler, and then you could click here and you would get to Event Bridge Scheduler, or you can go straight to it, which is what I did here. So you will go to Schedules, and then you will create a schedule. The picture on the right side is what it should look like. The picture on the left side is what you're going to see once you open the form. Again, this is just another one of those really long forms that you just need to edit. And the editing itself is fairly simple. You just need to click a bunch of things. You will add a schedule name. I would probably add the same one that is already here. That way it's easy to check back. But we had that one called start text. You ignore the next two fields. Over here in schedule pattern, you can have a one-time schedule, which would be like today. I'm going to show you an example of just a one-time schedule. Or you could have a recurring schedule, which is what you would do for an intensive longitudinal design. You would have to have the survey being delivered multiple times. Once you click recurring schedule, a new window will show up. This part here is the part on the left is going to get bumped down. And not a new window, but a new chunk is going to show up right underneath. And it's going to ask you if you want a rate-based schedule, which I have never used, or a cron-based schedule. That's the one that you're going to select to specify the times. And the cron's expression is this thing over here. What it is telling on the first field is how many minutes within a 24-hour day do you want that time to be. So if I want it to be 8:30, the minutes would be 30. The hours would be 8. If that makes sense. And then the day of the month, because in our study, it didn't matter the day, the number day of the month. We were sending Monday and Friday. So it just goes a little question mark over there. Because again, the month does not matter. We are not sending participants something on Labor Day. If this was Labor Day, then maybe you might have wanted to put the day of the month specific there and then the month specific there. That's not the case for us here. And on the next field where it says day of the week, that's where you want to specify what days of the week you want. And you can see that it has month for Monday and then Friday for Friday with just a comma in between. The format has to be this way as well. If you Google, you should be able to find how to write this and make it different for your study, but it has to be in this 24-hour format and the days of the week have to be in that format too. I said you could pick any day of the month or any year if you have a specific day that you want the survey to run, like election day. If you want to distribute surveys to people on election day, you could put those over there. And then it will show you the next 10 trigger dates. And I recommend double checking that because that's one way of making sure that what you set up in that formula expression is what you wanted it to be. And you can see these are from this year. At the very bottom, you will ask you if you want a flexible time window. If you want your participants to get a survey anywhere within a 3-time window, say that your study is one survey randomly in the morning, one survey in the afternoon, one in the evening, you could set it to be a flexible time window. In our case, we wanted participants to receive the invite at 8 a.m. sharp, or as close to 8 a.m. as possible. And the reminders at 12, 3, and 7. So we set the flexible time window to be off because we want them to get the survey at a specific time. If that's not the case, you could change that window. And then, like I said, you got to specify when you want your study to run. How long do you want this code to run at this time of the day on these days of the week? And again, this is in 24-hour format. I guess this is an old version because it says 2023 or for the previous study. And I set it for June 12th, starting at 9 a.m. and then ending on June 18th at 12. Yeah. As you keep scrolling down that form, it will ask you, how do you want to link? What do you want to control in AWS? You're setting up a trigger. What are you trying to trigger? And you're trying to trigger the Lambda function. So you're going to select that on the left. And what it is doing is what I showed you earlier, just from here, setting this path to Lambda. And for every single step that you set, you are going to have to select this. Remember, there are 4 of them, right? Start text, reminder text check, final check, and export to S3. you're gonna do the same thing because they are all triggering Lambda. If you remember the flow as well, it was event bridge, Lambda, then everything else. So this is that link there. And you've seen something relatively similar when you were updating your distribution. And that's because this is pretty much the same thing. So what you're going to do here is we're going to select your Lambda function at the top. This one is not this Qualtrics Manager. This was the old name. When I show you here, this name is going to be different up there, but you just select the name of your Lambda function for everybody. Since that is set up by the YAML, it should be QM dash, I think, manager or something like that. And then you got to fill in this payload field over here. It is always going to look like one of these, depending on which of those 4 steps I said that you have to set up. So this one is for starting the text, and you want to trigger the action of starting text. And for that reason, you will type that in there in that field. And if you were setting up final check, then you would change that action to final check and so on. This is also in a text file in the box folder. So select function, enter the text in there, and then click next. You will ask you if you want to enable that schedule already. I am very anxious, so I always leave it disabled. It's going to be enabled by default. I disable it, and when I'm ready, then I go there and I enable it. But currently, the one that I'll show you is also, I believe, disabled right now. Ignore the one at the bottom. This one is just what do you do after. You could delete that schedule once it's run. That's not what you want to do in this case, so you just leave it with none. This on the right side is how many times do you want to retry triggering the program? If for some reason it doesn't work, like if it times out, how many times do you want to keep trying to do this until you tell it to stop, and for people to not receive multiple text messages, for example, or also not to be billing you multiple times and running the program multiple times. So we set it up here for the number of retries to be within that 24-hour window, just because participants had only 1 day to complete the survey. If you have a lower amount of time that it's worth even retrying to send this, then you would set this lower. So in theory, we could have done 4 hours because they should maybe have completed something within 4 hours. How many attempts? I just did this, and when I show you, the default was 185. I would probably change it to 1, maybe 2 instead of 185. Oops. And then everything else at the bottom of that you can ignore and continue scrolling. You will ask you if you want to create a new role for this schedule or just use an existing role. Keith said that you don't have to create a new one every single time. Again, this is related to that IAM stuff. Say that you want each schedule to be controlled by different people and you need to monitor that, then maybe you would create separate roles so different people have control over different actions, but that's not the case here. So you can just click use an existing role and click any role that's on this drop-down list, or create a new one and then just keep reusing that one for every trigger that you create. And now you just have to distribute your survey. The schedule is set up. Once it's enabled, you will trigger the code and you will distribute your survey to people whenever it is that you told it to do that. And then it is also going to export your file to S3. We chose to do it at the end of the day, but you could choose to do this multiple times a day. The only difference is that, other than the timing, is that you're going to be running the function more times. And the more times you run it, because you get billed as you go, you're going to get billed for more running time if you do this multiple times. So I actually want to show you how you do this. The only thing that I changed at the bottom is that there is a manual way to test a delivery, which I will show you how to do and that we recommend that you do. Instead, you could, for instance, set everything up, create a distribution list that is only you and a few more people, and a survey that is just a mock survey for you and some other people, and then set everything up and then just wait for it to run and make sure that it's working, which I think is a good step. But maybe before that, you just want to make sure that everything looks the way that it should look before you even set up the schedule. And I'll show how you can do that. And I'm going to change my screen share. And I'll get to this in a moment. Any questions so far, actually, about this? All right. So I created for myself a little reminder that I'll put on the screen. All right. So I first want to show you how to edit that event bridge. So mine is down here in the saved. If I had gone, remember I mentioned straight from event bridge, the schedule will be somewhere down here at the bottom. And I already have several schedules set up because we have run this a few times already, but I will enable a few of them and I will show, I've already set some of them up. So I'm going to set up the export to S3 one for you. So if I were actually creating this, you would click create schedule. I would add the schedule name here, like I mentioned. Does the name of the schedule have to be specific? Yeah, to the code. No, it could be any name, so I could create a test one. So export to S3 demo. Schedule group. We're going to do this on a one-time schedule because I'm just going to show you how to do that today. And right now it's 12:18, so let's do that for 12:30. I'm not confident that I will get that will be done sooner. And we want this flexible window off. You could have changed how flexible your time is over here. We will click next. We are trying to trigger Lambda, so I selected that here and it prompted me to go down here. Remember that you're going to have to select which Lambda function you're talking about because in theory you could have many Lambda functions going on. And this is the one that we want. And now I'm going to have to open the template because I do not remember this was written. Do this for workshop. And then to the file that says JSON for event bridge scheduler. And I'm just going to copy. Export to S3. I'm going to paste it. This is what I meant about I copied this from a text file and you can see that the quotation marks are a little curlier than they were in the example. So you do want to remove that and replace it with the straight version of them. I'm just double clicking it. Adding quotes. And then we are going to click next. I'm going to enable because we want this to run, but ordinarily I would probably leave this disabled. Action. I guess we do have to choose one and I did not mark that. I'll edit the PowerPoint. Selecting none. Retry policy, it doesn't really matter. Let's do 1 hour. Definitely not 185 attempts, just one. I will skip the encryption and I will just use some random existing role that we have. Then next. And now it's just going to give me the option to review it. This is the schedule name we created. We want this to be only one time, no flexible time window. The target is Lambda, that's what we're trying to control. Permissions, and then here is how long that this can go for. So 1 hour, and we only want one retry. And we're gonna create schedule. It did not like something that I did. The execution will be provided must allow AWS to assume this role. Well, that's fine. Let's go back then. Here are my roles. Let's just create a new role. Right. That's like pulling teeth. The speed of it. There we go. All right. So now if I go back to my schedule, that one that I just created is enabled over here. And I'm gonna enable the other ones that I created earlier. They are the exact same ones that I showed you, and they work the exact same way in terms of the process of creating it. And I actually want to make sure the times are correct. So let's start the text at. Oh, it is already past 12. So let's do 12:29, 28, 6 minutes. Next. This is all good. Next. Save. And, let's edit the final check. We don't need the reminder because I'm not going to send a reminder as part of the demo. But if you were doing that, then you would need to enable and set that one up too. 6, so let's do 29. Next. 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 Schedule. All right. So the schedule is set up. What I'm going to do now is just update the Lambda function. I'm not sure that I will be fast enough to get this ready in time. If I am not, and you don't get a text, I will just send this manually so you can see how it works. So I'm going to go over here and then just change my text very briefly to something like. This is not going to be probably 160 characters. There we go.
Change the wrong one.
I did change the wrong one. I just noticed. It's okay. Let's skip that. There we go. And then we're going to deploy. Notice that I chose the survey start. That was already opened as a tab, but I could have just double clicked it to open. We're going to deploy to change the code. We're going to incorporate this into it. Now we need to go to that test window because I need to check to change our distribution. This is, the survey is the same, but this distribution ID is not the right one. I was using that yesterday to test this. So we're going to change. This one. And we are going to save for now. Then that's it. All right. I'm actually going to go to Qualtrics because I cannot remember if the time that I set up is correct. So this is my survey. This is the text of the survey. I'm going to go to distributions. I've already set this up. This is the one that I'm trying to send you right now, and it's actually going to work. It is set up to send at 1:30 p.m. And oh, no, let me change the time. Yeah, it is set to be sent at 1:30. I should change it to be sent, I guess, at the time that, do you have to do that for this one too? Yeah. At the time that I said it was sent text, which is, does anyone remember what I did? It was 29, 29 or 26 for the start, right? 29 was for the backup. Anyone?
Actually, you should be fine to do what you had.
I could leave as it was?
Yeah, I thought today was the 23rd.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, in theory, then this should be correct. What happens is the function will send it, will send the text so long as the email is within 24 hours of when the function is set to start. So in this case, because the email is set up for today, you will send it even if the email has not already been sent. But you if you were doing this as part of a study, you definitely want both of them likely to be at the exact same time. So participants can get both at once. So let's just change it just in case. Sorry,
I would just leave it.
just leave it, okay. All right. I think I enabled, there we go. So in theory, we should all be getting, well, everybody that was on this distribution list should be getting a text message soon. How you can do this manually also. These here that are showing on private saved events, these are, you create them the exact same way you created the update distribution piece of it. You just create new event, type out start_text, and the content that's going to go here is identical to what was in the event bridge, because this is just a way of testing the event bridge setup or testing that the start text will work. So I'm going to use the start one. It's over here. And the same curly bracket action start text. And then I'm just going to hit test. And again, we should all get the text messages, assuming that I set up actually the contact list correctly. I did not check that I set it up correctly, but we should get it. I can troubleshoot that. I don't think anyone got it, did they?
I got
it. You did it? Oh, yay, okay. Okay.
it.
I just took, oh, I didn't put myself on the contact list. That's why I'm not getting it. Okay. See, you do want to do that if you're the researcher. Put yourself on it. I just used the list that Jenny sent me, so.
So the text won't send unless you hit test?
This is just for testing it. If I set the event bridge in time for this to actually run, I'm not sure that I was fast enough. If this was set up with enough time for it, then it should have gone on its own automatically. If I was a little slow to set it up, it's possible that I just passed the time that it was supposed to be going out. And I actually don't even know that I, yeah. Oh, the time is in, no, that's right. Gosh, maybe I was too slow, not sure. And I did not test the backing up to S3, so we'll actually see if that goes on its own. So you could just go over here, S3. This is the bucket. The bucket's already created for you too. You would have created the name of that in one of the previous steps that we did. And that you're just going to click on that and you will have been updated automatically for us. And you should actually override the older versions of it. I think this one is from yesterday. Yeah. Yeah, probably did not set up something on the fly correct in Event Bridge. But if you follow my instructions on the PowerPoint, that will work. I just did this a little too quickly. Let's see if I just go. Soon, actually. So the issue was my setting up on Event Bridge, because if I go to Lambda, it's not an issue with the code. Because if it was, then the stuff would not be set. All right, export to S3, test. And this is the same code that you would have put in export to S3. Back to S3. Our bucket, and then that one is showing down here. So this one's sent manually by me telling it to test that action code. In theory, I would have set up the time properly in Event Bridge, and that code would have run in Event Bridge properly instead of me doing this manually. But you can test it manually too. Now, nobody's phone numbers will show up. Remember I mentioned this is gonna, oh, sorry, I thought you were seeing my screen. You're not seeing my screen. All right. So the description, this is just the title of that email I sent you. Because I'm just overriding the bucket, and that's what it's going to keep doing, you're going to have multiple printouts for every single day that you back up the tracker. However, it is going to just be adding to the previous file. So because I did not create a new bucket for today versus all the times that I tested, you can see that there are some other rows here that are test emails. And these are all the ones that I sent to people who gave their phone numbers to be part of the demonstration. The ID on the row B, this is just created by Qualtrics. You can ignore that. This is that distribution ID that I entered in AWS when I updated the distribution. These are participant IDs created automatically by Qualtrics. They will be the same for the same people. So by sending, you will see that who has identical here. This person and this person are the same person. Even though the ID in Qualtrics is different, you can see that their external data reference, which is what I told you that you have to enter as part of the contact list as the participant ID that you're assigning, that is the same. And their Qualtrics ID is also going to be the same. And if you merge IDs in Qualtrics, that's what can get wrong. That's CID. And then that can mess up the delivery. Here's a survey link that was sent to each of these people. You can see that it's a little bit long. And oops, this is whether the survey was delivered. It's a 1 for yes, a 0 for no. And this is just a link expiration date, which is how the function chose which link to send that day. So it's based on that survey day, which is why the survey distribution link expiration had to be within 24 hours of when the code is running.
There's nothing here about whether we clicked on the link. That's back.
Oh yeah, I didn't update it first. Let me go to that. Yeah, I don't think I set up the event bridge correctly on my own.
No, it's the big deal.
Here.
I was curious.
No, that's a good point. Let's do that first. Yes, I had that on my list too. All right, this is the final check, which is one of the 4 that you would have set up in Event Bridge and that you can set up here manually, the same way that I showed you. I'm not sharing the correct screen. New share. Just share my desktop. Private there. Sure. So I'm choosing the final check one. Remember that one is the final check. The final check is the one that we are going to use to check the survey completion, not to send another reminder, but just to check the completion before we update the bucket, which is the one that was not run. Which makes me more convinced that I did it too quickly and missed something. So event name, final check, the action is identical to the one that I showed you here on that screen. This screen. These over here. These are the ones that are going to go there, which are the same that were in Event Bridge. And then I'm just going to click test. And I'm going to have to re-export it now. To export test. I think. Okay, so I know the mistake I made with that too. It seems like I wrote export S3 when it should have just been export. So it's probably my typo there. I'll adjust that on the slides too and re-upload them. All right, now we go back to S3. Click the bucket. This just got overwritten. Download it. All right, there we go. So I don't know who anyone is from the numbers, but I can tell that one person opened the survey but did not submit it, at least this time.
These pulled from Qualtrics.
These are pulled straight from Qualtrics, yes.
Yes.
So the code for them is equivalent to whatever Qualtrics would use, or the label is whatever Qualtrics would have used. So survey finish would be the people that completed it and clicked the button to send
Yeah.
the survey. Let's see, survey started. If I understand correctly, it's just opened it, and pending. And pending is if people did not even click the link yet.
And it would read that column to know whether to send a reminder that.
Exactly. So it will read this column, and unless it says survey finished, it will send a reminder to participants to complete it. And so once you send several reminders, this screen will end up getting very long, and you will have a different title here, of course, on the left side, because the title of the email ideally would be slightly different. It doesn't have to be, but it's one way of distinguishing. The IDs are going to be the same. The external data reference will be the same. The participant ID in Qualtrics will be the same. The survey links will be different for each distribution. The status will continue getting updated, and the expiration date is also going to be updated. So there are a couple of different ways of tracking which survey you sent. And then I just created a bunch of formulas for myself after. This is a CSV file. So I just converted to XLSX and created some formula so that I could check for each CID or for each external data reference, how many surveys were completed out of the ones that I distributed, or so on. And that is it. I am sorry that I did not put the correct text in the actions for the event bridge. I did set up the actions in Lambda ahead of time before the workshop, which is why they were correct. And this one is not. This is not correct. Just have one final page that I want to show. Go. Share screen, PowerPoint. All right. And this is just that screen. I just have a little map of what you need to find if you were to not watch the video and you're just looking at the PowerPoint slides. You also have a little tracker of what it would look like over here. So yeah, these IDs completely ignored. These were just created by Qualtrics. The ones that you want are those on the external data reference. And I did put an action to increase urgency participants so that they would actually complete the survey. And it worked. And for the reminders, I had in the middle reminder, and then the rest of the text was there. And then I would put survey 2 out of 8 or 4 out of 8 so that they knew where they were standing. And that is actually it. So, and I think I am relatively on time. Yeah, 10 minutes passed, but time for questions. If you have questions specific to your study, or if you would like to brainstorm how we can adjust any of this to make it work for a study that you have in mind, we can talk about that too, or just questions about the setup. And I will make a note physically, because a mental will not stay, to update the PowerPoint slides so that I can adjust that one table that I had with the action commands that are actually going to work, which are the ones that I had in Lambda, but are not the ones that are currently in EventBridge when I set it up at least, so. Yeah.
Okay, I have a quick clarifying question.
Please.
You only gave it the reminder text command once. So do you therefore create a different Qualtrics email for each of your reminders?
You would, yes, let me show you how you can do that. Yes. You would. I think I'm sharing the screen. Yes, that is correct. Firefox, share. So I went to Qualtrics and I wanted to send reminders I would click over here, schedule reminder. And then I would write out that reminder text, schedule that, and the reminders would get sent based on whatever schedule you set up here. And with that text message that you put in the code. We did talk about like, well, maybe we should add more things so you can add multiple different reminders and the text of the reminder is different. And we did not get to that. So what I did was I set for myself an alarm at 4 o'clock. After the reminder was set at 3, I would just go over there really quick, change like one number and say like, you have 1 hour actually to submit the survey. And then I would just deploy that and it would send the updated version of the reminder at that time. So yeah, currently there isn't anything that would allow us to send a different reminder text to the text message automatically. You would have to change that manually there. But yeah, and then you would have to set up the reminder here in Qualtrics first. Yeah, of course. Other questions?
Did you get the problem you sometimes get with Qualtrics where they don't click the last thing and therefore your file doesn't show completed?
Yeah, there were people that when I was tracking, it looked like I had fewer people completing the survey than there actually were because, and this is something you can change in Qualtrics. If you go to the survey, in survey flow, I think it's here. There is, yeah, you can set how long the survey will be open and incomplete before it's submitted. And if I set it, which I believe I set it for like 2 days, then by the time that it was uploaded to the bucket, it was not yet submitted because it would have taken 2 days and it was uploaded just a few hours after the survey expired. So you could set this time to be much shorter. So then by the time that the final check is happening and that stuff is getting uploaded, the information is getting uploaded to the bucket, then you should get the actual completion for that person. It's possible that it would still be incomplete and you would say that there
But you
too.
would send them a reminder, but did you would need to?
That's right, because it would have already been over. Oh, you mean during the study?
Yeah.
They would still get a reminder, yeah, unless it's survey finished. I think you would say survey started. If they didn't click the button, it would still say survey started throughout the day. If they didn't click that last one. And then once it's uploaded, it would still say survey started, but because it's like that, they would keep getting reminders.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're wondering, why am I getting a reminder when I did it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they click it, it should take them to where they stopped the survey. But yeah, so we did look for a few of them because it said survey started and they hadn't clicked it, that it was incomplete. But then when I checked at the end of the set, I was like, oh, actually this person did have. So when I was paying them, I had all this data. I should have exported once more at the very end just to make sure. But as I was setting up the payment, I was like, oh my gosh, this person should get like, 5 out of 8. But it turned out they did 8 out of 8. And I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't gone back. So yeah, it's okay. Oh, yeah.
So this is kind of a broader question as I'm trying to think about future research and working with students. One of the themes that you brought up, which I appreciate very much, is this focus on how this can be a cost reduction tool, right, to reduce research costs. And in my little corner of the universe, we basically have this problem where, well-funded people are able to publish in our fund journals because of the pure costs of getting into those fund journals, which in my field means that it's mostly business school people, right? So as I'm thinking about this technology, one of the next things that comes up to mind is, if you've been thinking in terms of how to reduce costs, what have you discovered in terms of, if you're using this technique, does that act? I mean, I know you conducted a study that was expensive in terms of participant payments, but is it plausible that this can reduce overall participant costs too, if by virtue of the kinds of people you'd be able to reach or anything? Like, have you encountered that or been exposed to that? Just to bring the especially if we're thinking about more interesting samples without having to spend $20,000 to find them.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think you could, because if the participant burden is lower, now that they don't have to check their email, they're just getting a text message for this, then the amount that they're getting paid, it would also make sense that if you're getting paid at a consistent rate that maybe you keep in the lab just generally, then at that time and the effort is reduced. So in theory, you could also, you would not be expected, I guess, to pay as much for the work if they're not having to do so much work, if they just have to open the text message instead of having to go online, open a browser, or open their email, click it and complete the survey in the browser while they're sitting somewhere on the computer. And if I understand correctly.
Yeah, but well, it's not, but it's actually a really nice point also, because the participant burden is also a psychological event that triggers all these annoying processes. And, you know, I mean, one of the biggest confounds that we deal with that none of us talk about is the consent form. What does that do to our participants?
It's very
You know,
long.
and then there's these other technical issues, not to mention email and whatever else. So I do appreciate all
Yeah.
that.
And I wonder, I think that depends too on the sample. Like if you're doing this with AmTurk sample, then they typically get like maybe corresponding, I guess, to minimum wage or for the amount of time they're putting into it. I think that in this case, because part of the incentive and the reason we pay them so much too was because since this was a me thing and that they couldn't get paid until the end of the month, we needed to incentivize them to stay and to continue completing surveys. So getting that extra $10 after 6 had to be sufficient amount of money for them to come back and wait an entire month to be paid for everything. The baseline, some of them would have completed the baseline 2 weeks before the actual EMA version of the study was launched. So some people waited a long time to get paid. And I think that if it's easier to pay participants and or they are confident that they're going to get paid, maybe you don't have to give them such a huge incentive to be there.
So one strategy which isn't in effect anymore, but back in say 10, 12 years ago when MTurk was just emerging, AI was, you know, something from the Terminator movies, right? So we didn't have to deal with bots. You could put a study up on MTurk, you could offer 12 cents, and you just let it run for the entire semester. By the end of the semester, you'd get the 50 participants you need for your 2x2 design or whatever it was, right? But the point is that like it was a way for everyone to do research on the cheap, which was what the democratizing factor of MTurk was, that it suddenly made it possible, which we've now ruined too, right? And so is there a way for this kind of technology to help researchers get back there? Think about like the average researcher at the small college who arguably has their ideas are just as high quality as anyone else's, but because of resource issues can't keep up with the modern whatever arms race we're playing now with data, right? How do we deal with it? And how can this technology be part of that answer?
It's a trick question for me.
No, I mean, just playing around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you have, that's a good question. I think that, I mean, if you can continue paying, I keep thinking, you know, for the time of the participant, I think I would still try to do whatever the rate is, but if you can't access them through MTurk and you have another way of accessing samples that have consented to receive text messages, then this would be a great way to try to recruit from a big pool of people that otherwise you would not have access to, and that you do not have to create an MTurk account, that you don't have to put, you know, money into MTurk, however that ends up happening. So that could be one way, but again, you would have to have access to that pool of participants. Another option too would be not to be on the participant payment end, but to use an open source and a completely free survey platform, if that is possible. And then you would not have to pay however many dozens or hundreds of thousands the university has to pay, I guess, or the institution for a specific platform. But I think with the limitation of the sending text message to people who haven't consented, I think that's where I see the barrier of recruiting people more broadly, unless you have already gotten their consent. It's trouble.
I mean, I'm just thinking broadly now, just beyond this technique, but, you know, we played with, and certainly Caitlin's been very involved in this passive sensing of the phone, where then you potentially reduce the burden to zero, because they just allow you to access what they do. And conceivably, there could be apps that you ask them to download that they could interact with. But all the native information, if the sensors are on, you get all kinds of data. You know, there are technologies. I remember reading a study about whether you got better responses if you allow them to respond to the items within a text message. Well, one, they had to go out to Qualtrics. The next, they could do it within the text message. The third was they could do it on they got a notification after they opened the home screen. But the easiest one was it literally appeared on the home screen. So they didn't even have to do anything other than lift their phone up
Wow.
and do that, which potentially reduces the burden to virtually nothing.
Yeah, I agree. I think the challenge, with the passive too, kind of similar to this one, is you need a lot of consent to install the app and to enable everything and to make sure it's continuously enabled and that they're not turning off location tracking. So I think that it has some of the same challenges, or similar, different challenges, but some of maybe the same barriers, whereas the popping up message on the phone would probably be the easiest one. That said, you could also do that for this one. It's just that then it's the same load, I guess, but you could set it up so that you have always on screen and text messages are popping up with full content on your home screen and overlaying everything, being overlaid with everything else that you have. That would be a setting on the phone that we could instruct participants to do, so that when they get a text from us, it's popping up there. But that's going to happen for every single text that they get. And we have to ensure that they do that too. So then there's the added load again. So I think there's always some barrier in some fashion, whether it's the permission or it's, the permission to receive the text, the permission on the phone, or just different ways. And if they decided to send us to spam and they didn't want to complete the study anymore, it would just be sent to spam. So there's that too. So got to make sure that they are actually getting the text messages, the reminders on their phones, instead of just being flushed too.
On that spam filter is part of why I'm attracted to this. We did this international project where we were basically emailing about 15,000 people over the course of a year and a half. And enough of them had turned us, to block sender, that all of our emails were then going to spam. And then we had to create some, new solution there. And I feel like this is, my gut feeling is that this is going to open things up in a new way. And part of the reason is because it is simply cheaper and you don't have to interface with these companies that have this kind of iron grip on our research methods.
Yes. And I think that one way that this actually bypasses spam, and this is unintentional, but I remember when we were setting up the emails for Qualtrics, if you send too many emails at once, it can also be treated by the email server as spam. And one of the ways that you can kind of address that is to put a time on the email, like a timestamp on the email that includes milliseconds or something like that, which means every single email that goes out is going to be slightly different. So it's not going to get treated as spam. And these text messages, people are getting individualized links, which means that no message is identical to the previous. And even the reminders are slightly different, and these are different links as well for the reminders. So it's possible that by using this method, although I hadn't thought of that, but maybe this is why they're also not getting treated as spam, because they don't look identical for 200 people or 600 messages in a day.
So Rick mentioned before about Android versus iOS, and you said there weren't any issues with that. But I guess I'm going to ask you to predict the future, but given that Apple is so dedicated to privacy and security, do you think that might become an issue in which it's going to be filtering out and reading it as spam messages compared to Android?
Yes, potentially. I think so. I think that what we try to do, So two different things, I guess, and I don't know that they work the same way within the operating system, but in addition to saving the number, we told, part of the reason why I wanted participants to save us was to make us a contact. And if we were a contact, then that would reduce the chances, I think, that we would become spam.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that the carrier itself, once it sees this flow of things coming out of one single number, if that's when it's going to treat us as spam, potentially, depending on how Apple is running, the text message permissions. But in the reasoning for telling them to put our contact info was to hopefully, maybe if we were contacts, we wouldn't be thrown, to spam. But it's possible that if the decision of whether this is a spam happens before it even gets close to your phone, if it's really at the early end of things, then it's possible that it would be turned into spam even before, it gets to participate.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an issue. I'm still getting like 15 political texts a day, so. So maybe down the line.
Aaron,
Sort of related to that, one other thing you could do, like on iPhones now, you can sort your messages by like known senders versus like you can filter them. So you could have a little like in your FAQs of like how to do that so that it goes to the top of like, you know, their friends and family and the lifestyle.
That's a great idea.
The other question I had was, do you think enabling the two-way and having them respond to the first one, like with something that you actually don't care about, to show that they're not just receiving, but they're communicating back, maybe that would help? I don't know.
that's true. Yes, that they're actually interacting with this, and this is
Right.
not that's a good point. I can see that would work, as long as they're entering. I think in terms of IRB, that's even easier if they're just entering some absolutely random information.
Right,
just
like
to confirm it.
something like, I don't know, like what temperature is it right now, or something completely unrelated to like any personal information.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm part of that. And if it doesn't even matter the information, and I haven't tested the pinpoint dashboard proper, but from what I understand, that information would end up in the dashboard. It just wouldn't go to the database. But if we don't care what this information is, and you just need to go and check that the person answered, then you don't even need to adjust anything really in the code. Just adjust it in pinpoint. And you can manually send text in pinpoint too. So that would be, you're gonna get charged for it, but you can do that and then test the phone numbers without having to update the code essentially, if you wanted to.
And Aaron asked before about WhatsApp, and you said that should be possible to integrate with WhatsApp, right?
That's what he said. If they have API documentation that allows you to connect it with the program, then yes.
Okay.
But we haven't seen if they do, so.
Yeah, because in the Winston Center, we use the Grasshopper, which gives you a number that has, like, assigns you a name. So like if we call a participant, then it says from UNC. So then that could also help with the spam and acceptance from participants or something. I don't know. That's not a question, just a comment.
No, that's a good point though, because I mean, for just general uses of the workshop, I think that for designing study, this is still useful.
Yeah, it's an additional cost then, at least for that, whereas WhatsApp should be free. I'm not sure, but.
It's a good idea, yeah.
It says send WhatsApp messages via pinpoint. So I just
then
put it in the
yes.
chat. So I think it would work the same way, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Then just need to adjust that to.
That would probably help for like Ukraine, like Anne might be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
example.
Yeah. No carrier costs, nothing. I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah.
I get a bunch of WhatsApp spam about, making money with Bitcoin, so. And that's coming through, so the rest should as well. I did consider sending a file that is a contact card. Kind of like how you can send a contact to a
Great
friend,
idea.
so that would be one way to do that too. I did not figure out how to do it, but maybe that's another question. Yes.
So I just wanted to throw it out there, kind of thinking about like different apps as well as like internationally. It will differ depending on usage, but my home country, we use Telegram, came to prominence a couple years back. And I just want to bring it up just because like there is some, I don't know if we can access it using API, but similar to WhatsApp, it is like online, it's free. It also has some capability for Like I know when I was in like secondary school, we actually used it a lot for like, you can set up games inside it so that you can have like interaction. You can also set up like polls and things like that. So just in terms of like user interface, it's a little more like it can mimic, at least like back then, it can mimic some of like the survey things. And also like it uses like, you don't need a phone number for it because you can set it up with a username. So in terms of like whether or not people have phones, like that, whether or not if they have the app itself, it can be installed like anywhere and it's accessible in like a different way. So just bringing that up in terms of like internationally, yeah, and also just like
Looks like.
Sorry? Telegram.
If you just Google it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the technical details, so I'm not gonna send a particular link, but it looks like telegrams.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Wow, yeah, thank you. I didn't know about that. All right, I'm just making notes. All right, I just want to do a thank you to the people who helped, collaborators who helped develop the design of the study and the needs of the study, all the people that supported, even the undergrads that helped me with
Yes.
double checking that enormous list of emails and making sure that I had set everything up correctly, because as you can see, I make many typo mistakes. Of course, our software developer and cybersecurity engineer, and then all the funding that we received to run the study. So thank you.